Yunwoo Kim stood in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, his hands steady despite the weight of what he was about to do. Around him, representatives from 100 different worlds watched with barely hidden satisfaction. The crystal beings from Vorthak Prime glowed with pleasure. The floating jellyfish-like Zephyrians pulsed in rhythmic harmony. Even the energy beings called Luminari seemed brighter than usual. They thought they had won. Honored council members, Hyunwoo began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. I come before you today to deliver humanity's final message to this assembly. A ripple of excitement passed through the crowd. The Vorthak ambassador, a towering creature of living diamond, leaned forward. Finally, the humans see reason, it said, its voice like wind chimes in a storm. Hyunwoo smiled, but there was something in that smile that made the more observant species pause. Humanity has decided to withdraw from galactic affairs. Effective immediately, all human presence beyond our solar system will cease. We are going quiet. Do not look for us. The chamber erupted in celebration. Species that had fought wars for millennia suddenly found common ground in their joy. The humans, those stubborn, violent, unpredictable creatures, were finally removing themselves from galactic politics. But a few noticed that Hyunwoo did not seem defeated. He stood straight, his eyes clear and calm. This was not the posture of surrender. 3 days earlier, on Earth, Minji Park had made the final adjustments to the most ambitious project in human history. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, in a facility that officially did not exist, she stood before a machine that filled a cavern the size of a city. The silence protocol had been 50 years in the making, and today it would change everything. Are you sure about this? Asked her assistant, a young scientist named Bora Lee. Once we activate this, there's no going back. We'll be cut off from the galaxy completely. Minji nodded, her finger hovering over the activation switch. The galaxy has made it clear that humanity is not welcome as equals. They see us as children who need to be controlled or pests to be managed. Fine. Let them think they've won. Let them celebrate our absence. They have no idea what we're capable of when we're not playing by their rules. The machine hummed to life, its energy readings climbing beyond anything ever recorded. Around Earth in space, a barrier began to form. It was invisible to most sensors, but absolutely impermeable. Nothing would get in. Nothing would get out. Earth was sealing itself away from the universe. At the same time, Taemin Choi was coordinating the greatest withdrawal in military history. Every human ship, every colony, every research station beyond Earth's influence had received the same message. Come home. Now. Sir, reported his aide. Kyung-ho Park, the last transport has cleared Proxima Station. All personnel are accounted for. Taemin watched the displays as thousands of ships converged on Earth from across the galaxy. Mining vessels from the asteroid belts, colony ships from distant worlds, exploration vessels from the edges of known space, all coming home to a world that would soon be hidden from the galaxy forever. What about our allies? Asked Kyung-ho. The Terran Commonwealth worlds? The species that actually respected us? They've been warned, Taemin said quietly. We've shared what technology we can, given them defensive plans, but this is something humanity must do alone. The recall was unprecedented in its scope and precision. In 72 hours, every human presence beyond the solar system simply vanished. Ships that had been docked at alien stations undocked and left without explanation. Colonies that had existed for generations packed up and departed. Research stations that had operated for decades went silent and then disappeared. The galaxy watched in amazement and relief as humanity simply left. Back in the council chamber, Hyunwoo was delivering his final address. We thank the council for their guidance over the past century. We have learned much from our time among you. His words were polite, but something in his tone made the smarter species uneasy. Where will you go? Asked the Zephyrian collective, their thousands of voices speaking as one. Home, Hyunwoo replied simply. We have work to do. The Vorthak ambassador laughed, a sound like breaking glass. What work could humans possibly do that matters to the galaxy? You are a young species. You have contributed nothing of value to galactic civilization. Hyunwoo's smile grew wider, and now even the energy being sensed something was wrong. You are correct. We have contributed nothing of value to your civilization, but we have been watching. We have been learning, and we have been remembering. On Earth, Minji felt the barrier lock into place. The planet was now completely isolated from the galaxy. No signals could get in or out. No ships could approach or leave. Earth had become a closed system, hidden from the universe, but it was not sleeping. If the galaxy could have seen through the barrier, they would have witnessed the beginning of the most intensive period of development in human history. Research facilities sprouted like mushrooms after rain. Universities expanded beyond recognition. Every human mind was focused on a single goal: becoming worthy of the respect they had been denied. Phase 1 complete, Minji announced to the hidden facility. We are now invisible to the galaxy. Let's show them what a century of human focus can accomplish. In the council chamber, Hyunwoo was concluding his speech. We leave you with our gratitude and our respect. The galaxy is yours. May you find the peace that has eluded you for so long. He turned to leave, and the assembled species erupted in celebration once more. They had won. The troublesome humans were gone. Finally, they could build a proper civilization without human interference. But as Hyunwoo reached the door, he paused and looked back. Oh, and honored council members, when we return, and we will return, we hope you will be ready to treat us as equals, because next time we will not be asking for permission. The chamber fell silent. By the time they recovered enough to respond, Hyunwoo was gone and Earth's barrier was complete. The galaxy celebrated for months. Finally, they were free of humanity's chaos and violence. Finally, they could have the orderly, peaceful civilization they deserved. They had no idea that their real education was about to begin. The century of quiet had started. 50 years had passed since humanity vanished behind their mysterious barrier, and the galaxy had never been more peaceful. Trade routes that once saw human pirates now flowed freely. Diplomatic negotiations that once broke down due to human stubbornness now reached elegant solutions. Wars that might have involved human mercenaries were resolved through careful mediation. The Galactic Council had grown from 100 member species to nearly 300. New technologies were shared freely. Art and culture flourished as species learned from each other without the chaotic human element disrupting their careful exchanges. Captain Veltar of the Zephyrian Collective stood on the bridge of his exploration vessel, studying the readings from his long-range sensors. His ship was part of a routine survey mission, mapping new star systems for potential colonization. It was peaceful work, the kind that had become common in the post-human galaxy. Captain, his sensor officer reported, we're detecting unusual energy readings from the Sol system. Veltar's 1,000 individual minds focused on the report. The Sol system had been off-limits since humanity's withdrawal. Several species had tried to investigate over the decades, but none had returned with useful information. Most reported that their ships simply could not approach the barrier. How unusual, Veltar asked. The energy output has increased by 30% over the past 5 years. Whatever the humans are doing in there, they're using more power than before. Veltar made a note in his report. The council would want to know, though they had long since stopped worrying about whatever the humans were doing. As far as the galaxy was concerned, Earth was a curiosity, nothing more. On Earth, Sang-Ho Lee walked through the vast archives beneath Sol, his footsteps echoing in chambers that stretched beyond sight. The Deep Archive project was perhaps the most ambitious undertaking in human history, and after 5 decades it was nearly complete. Status report, he asked Haewon Kim, his deputy director. We've digitized 97% of all human knowledge, Haewon replied, consulting her tablet. Literature, music, art, scientific discoveries, historical records, personal memories. Everything is being stored in quantum matrices that can survive anything short of the destruction of matter itself. Sang-Ho nodded. The archives were more than just storage. They were insurance. If humanity's great gamble failed, if their return to the galaxy ended in disaster, at least their culture would survive. But that was only the beginning of what they were building. What about the other projects? Sang-Ho asked. Yoonji's dimensional research is ahead of schedule. She claims they've found ways to fold space that the galaxy never imagined. Do-Hyun's cultural preservation teams have created art forms that exist in 17 dimensions. And the military projects, Haewon paused. I don't have clearance for those reports, Sang-Ho smiled. Even he did not have complete knowledge of what humanity was building during their isolation. The compartmentalization was deliberate. If somehow the galaxy managed to penetrate their barrier, no single person could reveal all of humanity's new capabilities. In another part of Sol, Yoonji Yang stood before a machine that bent light around itself. Her team had spent decades studying the fundamental forces of the universe without the limitations that galactic science imposed. While the other species shared their knowledge freely, they also shared their assumptions and their limitations. Humanity, isolated and desperate, had been forced to think differently. "Run the test again," she told her assistant Minseo Choi. The machine hummed, and suddenly the air in front of it folded. Through the fold, Yoonji could see her laboratory from an angle that should have been impossible. The machine was creating a window through space itself, connecting 2 points that were physically separated. "Distance?" Yoonji asked. 47 kilometers, Minseo reported. "We're looking at the facility in Busan from here in Seoul." It was a breakthrough that would have amazed the galactic scientific community. Space folding had been theoretical for millennia, discussed but never achieved. Yet here in isolation, human scientists had not only achieved it but were refining it for practical use. "Scale it up," Yoonji ordered. "I want to fold space across star systems." Across the city, Do-hyun Moon was working on a different kind of preservation. His teams were not just saving human culture, they were evolving it. Freed from the need to explain their art to alien minds, human creativity had exploded in directions no other species had ever explored. "Play the symphony," he told his assistant, Young Jin Park. The music that filled the chamber was impossible. It existed in frequencies that human ears could not hear, but human minds could feel. It painted colors that did not exist in normal space. It told stories that unfolded across multiple dimensions simultaneously. It was art created by a species that had been forced to become more than they were. "Beautiful," Young Jin whispered, tears streaming down his face. "The galaxy has never experienced anything like this." Do-hyun nodded. Human culture had always been chaotic, difficult for other species to understand. Now it had become something else entirely, something that would challenge every assumption the galaxy had about consciousness, creativity, and the nature of intelligent life itself. Meanwhile, on the Vorthak homeworld, the crystal beings were celebrating another successful trade negotiation. Without human unpredictability disrupting their careful plans, galactic commerce had become elegantly efficient. Wars were planned and executed with mathematical precision, ending in negotiated settlements that benefited all parties. "The galaxy has never been more stable," announced Prime Crystal Zexhai during the Council's annual address. "Crime rates are at historic lows. Trade disputes are resolved quickly and fairly. Even our traditional enemies have found common ground. The removal of human chaos from our equations has created a golden age of peace." The assembled representatives cheered. They had been right to pressure humanity into isolation. The proof was all around them. But in the depths of space, long-range sensors were detecting anomalies. Energy signatures that did not match any known technology. Gravitational distortions that suggested experiments with forces beyond current understanding. And sometimes, just at the edge of detection, ships that appeared and vanished too quickly to track. The galaxy had dismissed these reports as sensor errors or natural phenomena. After all, what could the primitive humans be doing that would interest advanced civilizations? They had been isolated for half a century. Even with their stubborn creativity, how much could they have advanced? Back on Earth, in a facility that existed in folded space and therefore took up no room in normal reality, a different kind of archive was being built. This one did not contain human culture or knowledge. It contained detailed records of every species in the galaxy, their biology, their psychology, their technology, their military capabilities, their weaknesses. Information gathered over centuries of contact was being analyzed by minds freed from the constraints of diplomacy. Every insult, every dismissal, every condescending comment made to human ambassadors had been recorded and studied. Every military tactic used against human forces had been catalogued and countered. Every technological advantage other species held over humanity was being systematically eliminated. The galaxy thought they knew humans. They thought they understood human capabilities and limitations. They had spent centuries teaching humanity their place in the galactic order. Now humanity was going to teach them something in return. But not yet. The century of quiet still had decades to run. There was still so much work to do, so many problems to solve, so many limitations to transcend. The galaxy continued to celebrate its golden age of peace, unaware that their greatest teachers were preparing the final exam. The first ships disappeared on a Tuesday, J1. Shin was monitoring deep space communications from his station on Kepler 442b when the distress signals stopped coming from the Vorthak mining fleet. One moment, 12 massive crystal ships were reporting normal operations in the Helix Nebula. The next moment, nothing. No distress calls, no explosion signatures, no debris fields. They simply vanished from all sensors as if they had never existed. "Control, this is Monitor Station 7, J1 reported to the Galactic Defense Network. "I've lost contact with Vorthak Mining Fleet Delta. Last known position was Grid 77 Alpha in the Helix Nebula." The response was immediate. "Monitor 7, we're dispatching a search and rescue fleet. Maintain your watch." But when the rescue ships arrived at the mining fleet's last known position, they found empty space. No wreckage. No energy signatures. No trace that 12 ships carrying over 50,000 Vorthak workers had ever been there. It was the beginning of something that would shake the galaxy's confidence to its core. 3 weeks later, So-Young Kang was studying tissue samples in her xenobiology lab on New Centauri when the emergency alert came through. A luminary research station had gone silent. The luminari were beings of pure energy, thought to be immortal, capable of existing in the vacuum of space without protection. Their research stations were typically the safest places in the galaxy. The samples So-Young was examining came from the wreckage of what had once been that very station. But the wreckage was wrong in ways that made her scientific training rebel against what she was seeing. "This is impossible," she muttered, adjusting her microscope for the 100th time. The tissue sample showed luminari matter, but it had been altered at a quantum level. The energy patterns that made luminari beings what they were had been systematically dismantled and reorganized. "Something studied them," she reported to her supervisor. "Whatever attacked the station didn't just destroy it. It took the luminari apart piece by piece, learned how they worked, then put them back together wrong." Her supervisor, an elderly Zephyrian named Telmore, floated nervously near her workstation. "That's not possible. Nothing in the galaxy has that level of understanding of luminary biology. Even we barely comprehend how energy beings maintain consciousness." So-Young looked at the samples again. "Someone does now." The attacks continued over the following months, and each one revealed new impossibilities. Zephyrian hive ships, which shared consciousness across millions of individuals, were found with their mental networks severed in precise surgical strikes that left each individual alive, but completely isolated. Crystalline Vorthak colonies discovered that their quantum-linked command structures had been hacked in ways that violated the fundamental laws of physics. Wu Jin Han, working as a strategic analyst for the Galactic Defense Council, was the first to notice the pattern that everyone else had missed. "They're not random attacks," he announced during an emergency council session. "Look at the targets. A Vorthak mining fleet using their latest quantum extraction technology, a luminary research station working on dimensional physics, a Zephyrian hive ship with their most advanced collective consciousness protocols." The council members listened with growing unease as Wu Jin continued his analysis. "Whatever is doing this isn't trying to conquer territory or steal resources. They're collecting data, learning how we work. Every attack targets our most advanced capabilities, and in each case the attackers demonstrate knowledge they shouldn't possess." Prime Crystal Zexhai of the Vorthak Empire pulsed with agitation. What species could possess such capabilities? We've cataloged every known civilization in the galaxy. Nothing exists that could threaten all of us simultaneously. Wu Jin pulled up a holographic display showing the attack patterns. "That's what worries me. The technology being used against us doesn't match any known species. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. And the tactical approaches." When he paused, his face troubled. "They're too perfect. It's like whoever is doing this has fought us before and learned from every mistake." The council chamber fell silent. The implications were terrifying. J1's reconnaissance missions into the affected regions yielded increasingly disturbing data. In the wreckage of the luminary station, his team found scanning equipment that was clearly alien in origin, but incorporated elements from a dozen different species' technologies. It was as if someone had taken the best aspects of galactic science and combined them in ways no one had thought possible. "Sir," his pilot, a young Taraxian named Kixla, reported during their return journey, "we're getting strange readings from the Sol system." Jaewon looked up from his analysis of the alien technology. What kind of readings? Energy spikes. Massive ones. Like something is running tests on a planetary scale. Kixela's voice was nervous. Whatever the humans are doing in there, it's getting bigger. For the first time in decades, galactic attention turned toward Earth's mysterious barrier. Long-range sensors detected energy outputs that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. Gravitational anomalies suggested experiments with forces that existing science claimed were impossible to control. Could the humans be responsible for the attacks? Asked one council member during a closed session. The question was quickly dismissed. Humanity had been isolated for 75 years. Even with their stubborn creativity, they were still a young species. They had never demonstrated the kind of advanced technology being used in the attacks, but doubts remained. So Young's analysis of the attack patterns revealed another disturbing detail. The aliens weren't just studying galactic species. They were improving on galactic technology. Weapons that should have been impossible to build were being deployed with casual efficiency. Defenses that had protected civilizations for millennia were being bypassed as if they didn't exist. It's like they know everything about us, she reported to the Defense Council. Not just our current capabilities, but our potential capabilities. They're countering technologies we haven't even invented yet. The galaxy's greatest minds worked frantically to understand their hunters, but every solution they proposed seemed to be anticipated. Every trap they set was avoided. Every countermeasure they developed was rendered useless before it could be deployed. And still the attacks continued. Entire star systems began going dark. Civilizations that had existed for millions of years simply vanished overnight. The galaxy's carefully maintained peace was crumbling as ancient alliances broke down under the pressure of constant fear. In desperation, the Galactic Council authorized the most ambitious project in their history, an expedition to breach Earth's barrier and demand answers from humanity. The fleet that assembled was the largest in galactic history. Ships from every major civilization, carrying the galaxy's most advanced technology and greatest minds. If the humans were somehow responsible for the attacks, this fleet would have answers. But as they approached the Sol system, something impossible happened. The barrier around Earth opened. A single message was broadcast from the planet on all frequencies, in every galactic language simultaneously. We warned you we would return. We told you to be ready to treat us as equals. The examination period is now over. Please prepare for your final evaluation. The galactic fleet found themselves face to face not with the primitive humans they remembered, but with ships that seemed to bend reality around them, technology that made their greatest achievements look like children's toys. And in the depths of space, the attack suddenly stopped. The hunters had completed their work. The galaxy's teachers were ready to return to class. The real education was about to begin. Gi-tae-yoon had spent his entire career studying the impossible, but the data spread across his laboratory screens defied everything he thought he knew about reality. As the galaxy's leading quantum archaeologist, he specialized in reading the traces that advanced technologies left in space-time itself. Every weapon, every engine, every piece of sophisticated equipment left signatures that could be analyzed decades later. The signatures he was studying now told a story that made his hands shake. Hye-jin, you need to see this, he called to his colleague, Dr. Hyejin Lim, who had been humanity's last first contact specialist before the withdrawal. She had been brought out of retirement to help analyze the mysterious attacks. Hye-jin looked at the quantum traces Gi-tae had isolated from the attack sites. Her expression grew increasingly troubled as she recognized the patterns. These energy signatures, she said slowly, they're not from any species we've encountered, but they're familiar somehow. The mathematical frameworks, the energy distribution patterns. It's like seeing a language you once knew but haven't spoken in decades. Gi-tae nodded grimly. I've run the analysis 17 times. The weapon signatures don't match any known technology, but they incorporate elements from every major galactic civilization. Fourth-act quantum manipulation. Zephyrian collective consciousness protocols. Luminary energy control. Even some techniques from species that went extinct millennia ago. That's impossible, Hye-jin said. No one has that comprehensive knowledge of galactic technology. The databases would be... She stopped mid-sentence, her face going pale as the implications hit her. Show me the tactical patterns, she demanded. Gi-tae brought up holographic displays of the attack sequences. Each assault was perfect, striking at exactly the right moment with precisely the right force. The attackers seemed to know their target's weaknesses better than the targets knew themselves. The Vorthak mining fleet, Hygiene observed, studying the data. The attack came during their shift change, when their defensive matrix would be at minimum efficiency for exactly 47 seconds. How could anyone know that timing? The Luminary Research Station, Gitai added, struck during a dimensional experiment when their energy forms would be temporarily destabilized. The window of vulnerability lasted less than 6 minutes. Heejin felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature in the lab. Gitai, these aren't random attacks. Someone has been studying us, studying all of us, for a very long time. But who? Gitai asked. We've cataloged every species in the galaxy. Nothing exists that could... He stopped as Heejin's expression changed. She was staring at the data with the look of someone who had just seen a ghost. What if they're not aliens? She whispered. Gitai frowned. What do you mean? What if the attackers are us? What if someone has been running simulations of galactic civilizations, testing every possible scenario, learning how to defeat us by fighting perfect copies of us millions of times? The thought was so ridiculous that Gitai started to dismiss it immediately. Then he looked at the data again. The perfect knowledge of galactic weaknesses, the incorporation of technologies from every known species, the tactical precision that spoke of endless practice. That would require computational resources beyond anything the galaxy possesses, he said. The processing power needed to simulate entire civilizations, unless you had a century to build it, Hyojin said quietly. Both scientists turned to look at the display showing the Sol system. For 75 years, massive energy readings had been detected from behind Earth's barrier. Everyone had assumed it was some kind of defensive system or industrial project. What if it was something else entirely? Meanwhile, on the abandoned Kepler 442b monitoring station, Junho Bei was breaking a silence he had maintained for 75 years. The former Earth Defense Force captain was now ancient, his hair white and his face lined with age, but his mind remained sharp. He had been one of the last humans to leave galactic space, and now he was preparing to be among the first to return. The message he was recording would shake the galaxy to its core. To the Galactic Council and all member species, he began, his voice carrying the weight of decades. I am Captain Junho Bei, formerly of the Earth Defense Force. I have monitored your distress calls regarding the recent attacks on your civilizations. It is time you understood what has been happening. He paused, looking out at the stars that had once welcomed humanity, then cast them aside. 75 years ago, you made it clear that humanity was not worthy of standing as equals among you. You called us primitive, chaotic, violent. You treated us like children who needed guidance or pests who needed control. You were not entirely wrong. We were young, impatient, and yes, sometimes violent. But you made one critical error in your judgment. Junho's eyes hardened with memory. You assumed we would stay that way. You assumed that rejection and isolation would break us, make us weaker. Instead, you gave us the greatest gift any species has ever received. Time. Time to grow. Time to learn. Time to become something greater than what we were. He activated a holographic display showing energy readings from the Sol system. For 75 years, humanity has been fighting wars. Not against other species, but against perfect simulations of every civilization in the galaxy. We have fought the Vorthak Empire 10 million times, learning every strategy, every weakness, every strength. We have battled Zephyrian hive minds in countless scenarios, understanding their collective consciousness better than they understand themselves. We have studied luminary energy manipulation until we could predict their actions before they thought of them. The display showed tactical simulations running at incredible speed, entire galactic conflicts playing out in minutes. You taught us that we weren't strong enough, smart enough, or worthy enough to stand as equals, so we became better. We became stronger. And we learned to be very, very patient. Junho leaned forward, his ancient eyes burning with an intensity that had only grown stronger over the decades. The attacks on your civilizations were not carried out by aliens. They were carried out by quantum echoes. Perfect simulations of your own species turned against you using tactics we learned from fighting them for nearly a century. Every battle you lost, we had already won 1,000 times in simulation. He stood slowly, his movements careful but determined. You wanted to know if humanity was ready to rejoin galactic civilization. Consider this your final examination. We have tested your defenses, analyzed your capabilities, and cataloged your responses to threats beyond your current understanding. The results have been educational. The message concluded with Junho looking directly into the camera. We told you we would return, and we would expect to be treated as equals. That time has come. Earth's barrier will be lowered in 72 hours. We suggest you prepare your minds for what humanity has become during our century of quiet. Across the galaxy, the message was received with stunned silence. The impossible had become reality. The primitive humans they had dismissed decades ago had not merely survived their isolation. They had used it to become something the galaxy had never seen before. On Earth, behind the barrier that was about to fall, humanity was making its final preparations. They had spent a century becoming worthy of the respect they had been denied. Now it was time to find out if the galaxy was ready for what they had become. The examination period was over. The real education was about to begin. The barrier around Earth dissolved like morning mist, revealing a world that made the assembled galactic fleet question everything they thought they knew about reality. Sejun Park stood on the observation deck of humanity's flagship, watching the reaction of the galactic armada that had come to demand answers. Their ships hung motionless in space, sensors frantically trying to understand what they were seeing. Earth looked the same, yet completely different. The planet itself was unchanged, but around it moved structures that seemed to exist in more dimensions than normal space allowed. Ships that folded reality around themselves, stations that appeared to be built from crystallized time, and everywhere the gentle glow of technologies that the galaxy had never imagined. Prime Minister, his aide, Captain Minho Jiang reported, "The Galactic Fleet is requesting permission to approach." Sejun smiled. After a century of preparation, humanity was ready for this moment. Grant them safe passage to Earth orbit. It's time we had a proper conversation. The human ships that escorted the Galactic Fleet were marvels that defied understanding. They moved without visible propulsion, turned without inertia, and seemed to exist in several places at once. The technology was so advanced that it appeared almost magical to observers who still relied on conventional physics. On the bridge of the Zephyrian collective ship, Unity of Purpose, Admiral Velkar watched the human vessels with growing amazement. His 1,000 linked minds worked together to analyze what they were seeing, but the data made no sense. "How are they doing this?" one of his subordinates asked. "Their ships violate at least 17 fundamental laws of physics." "Perhaps," Velkar replied thoughtfully. "They have discovered that what we thought were laws were actually just suggestions." The Galactic Fleet was directed to a space station that hadn't existed moments before. It appeared around them, assembling itself from folded dimensions with casual ease. The station was vast, easily accommodating ships from hundreds of different species, yet it felt welcoming rather than intimidating. Da-Yun Cho, head of humanity's newly formed Reintegration Council, met the galactic delegates in a chamber that seemed to extend infinitely in all directions, while somehow remaining intimate and comfortable. Representatives from every major civilization found themselves seated at a table that accommodated their wildly different physiologies perfectly. "Welcome," Da-Yun said, her voice carrying clearly to every delegate regardless of their species' hearing capabilities. "We apologize for the dramatic nature of our recent demonstration, but we felt it was necessary to establish that humanity has changed during our absence." Prime Crystal Zexhai of the Vorthak Empire pulsed with confusion. How did you accomplish all this? 75 years ago, your species was barely capable of interstellar flight." Da-Yun smiled. "You taught us something valuable when you rejected our request for equality. You taught us that in this galaxy, respect must be earned through capability, not asked for through diplomacy. So we spent a century earning that respect." She activated a holographic display that showed the extraordinary scope of humanity's transformation. Cities that existed in folded space using no physical room but housing billions of people. Factories that assembled matter from pure energy. Research facilities where human scientists had rewritten the fundamental equations of reality itself. "We used our isolation to maximum advantage," Da-Yun continued. "While you celebrated our absence, we were learning everything we could about you. Every species, every technology, every strength and weakness. We fought simulated wars against perfect copies of your civilizations until we understood you better than you understand yourselves." The luminary representative, a being of pure energy named Lumthara, flickered with distress. The attacks? Those were tests? Educational exercises, Dayun corrected gently. We needed to verify that our simulations were accurate. We needed to understand how you would respond to threats beyond your current capabilities. And we needed to demonstrate that humanity had become something you would have to take seriously. Admiral Velkar spoke for the Zephyrian Collective. You could have destroyed us. Your technology is clearly superior to anything we possess. Why didn't you? Sejun stepped forward to answer. Because destruction was never our goal. You rejected us once because you saw us as chaotic and violent. If we had returned as conquerors, we would have proven you were right about us. Instead, we chose to become something better. He gestured, and the chamber's walls became transparent, revealing the extraordinary civilization humanity had built during their isolation. Space habitats that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Planets where human creativity had been unleashed to create wonders that boggled the mind. Art that painted with gravity itself. Music that existed in frequencies of pure meaning. We offer partnership, Sejun continued. Not as the desperate young species you once knew, but as equals who have something valuable to contribute to galactic civilization. The offers that followed left the galactic delegates stunned. Humanity was willing to share technologies that would revolutionize everything. Energy systems that could power entire star systems without fuel. Medical techniques that could cure diseases that had plagued the galaxy for millennia. Defensive systems that could protect against threats the other species had never even imagined. Why? Asked the Taraxian delegate, a insectoid being named Crixtal. What do you want in return? Dayun's expression grew serious. Recognition. Respect. A place at the table as equals, not as junior members who need guidance. We've proven we can defend ourselves and contribute to galactic civilization. Now we want the chance to help build something better than what came before. Captain Minho Jiang presented the most stunning revelation of all. Our deep space sensors have detected threats approaching from beyond the galactic rim. Enemies that make our little demonstration look like a children's game. The galaxy will need every advantage it can get in the wars that are coming. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had not just become powerful during their isolation. They had become visionary. While the galaxy celebrated peace, humans had been preparing for threats that no one else had even noticed. The choice is yours, Sejun said finally. You can welcome us back as partners, and together we can face whatever comes. Or you can reject us again and face the future alone. But understand this, we are no longer the species you cast aside. We are no longer asking for your permission to exist. We are offering our friendship, but we no longer need your approval. The galactic delegates looked around the chamber, at the impossible technologies that surrounded them, at the calm confidence of the humans who had spent a century transforming themselves from supplicants to saviors. Prime Crystal Zexhai was the first to speak. The Vorthak Empire formally recognizes humanity as an equal partner in galactic civilization. One by one, the other delegates followed suit. Species that had once dismissed humanity as chaotic children now acknowledged them as the teachers the galaxy had never known it needed. As the formal ceremonies concluded and the new partnerships were established, Dayun looked out at the stars that had once seemed so hostile to human dreams. The century of quiet was over. Humanity had returned not as the species that had left, but as something greater. They had taken rejection and transformed it into strength. They had used isolation to become indispensable. They had proven that sometimes the greatest victory comes not from demanding respect, but from becoming worthy of it. The galaxy would never be the same again. And for the first time in a century, that was exactly what humanity wanted. The real work of building a better future could finally begin.